Okay, I'll go ahead and turn the meeting over to you. Our Principal Advisory Council, September 5th, 2024, and our chairman, Brian Ehrenberg.
Thank you. I appreciate the brief introduction. I know we're going to start our first meeting of the school year by welcoming our new state superintendent, Dr. Robbie Fletcher. Wanted to just have a brief second to say that we appreciate your time, Dr. Fletcher, and just allowing us to be a voice to you. I know it's a big job running a school. It's a bigger job running a state school system. So we look forward to working with you this year, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Principal Ehrenberg. I appreciate that. It has been busy, but in the best of ways. And I'll tell you, I've had the opportunity so far to visit, to do opening days for Shelby County, Rockcastle County, Bourbon County. And last week I spent 3 days in Western Kentucky. And a lot of times when you're in Central and Eastern Kentucky, people think that Western Kentucky is Bowling Green, and they really don't know. But I've spent the days visiting schools at Murray Independent. I visited Livingston County. I visited Union County and also Christian County. And I think one of the elementary schools gave me a gift of a head cold. So I sound a little different today, but those of you that are in the buildings, you know exactly what that's like, especially at the beginning of the year. So again, I am visiting schools and visiting districts, and that's been an absolute joy for me to get to see students from across the state and to get to see our staff members. And actually, you can see behind me, this is actually my first visit back to the school system where I started as superintendent. So I'm in Lawrence County today, but I wanted to make sure I had some time to meet with the Principal Advisory Council. By way of a little bit of just welcome everybody to be a part of this. One of the things that you're going to hear from the commissioner, actually 2 things you'll probably hear as themes, and everything that I do is very first is building relationships, whether it be in meetings like this or whether it be face to face, getting that opportunity to talk to people. I think that it's hard to miss, hard to replace that face to face interaction with people and with students. So I really enjoy that. So one of the things that you'll see from me is trying to build relationships as much as possible, whether it be with principals or whether it be with legislators or superintendents of that matter, to make sure we have those relationships. But also too, opportunity, whether it be a new accountability system, whether it be legislative statute, working with legislators. It's how do we provide students more opportunity? How do we make sure that our students have that opportunity? And a lot of times those opportunities are given when we build more relationships. If you're a high school principal, having your students out in work-based learning opportunities, having them doing internships, those all come from having a relationship with your community, and also having those opportunities come from those relationships. So I think when you talk to the commissioner, when you talk to me, and when you'll hear me speaking, I hope that you hear those 2 themes in each and every day that when you come back. And also too, as part of that all-in mantra, that all-in for students. I say this all the time. There's basically with all-in, that mantra follows me because one, I owe it to the public educators that invested in me as a student. I had so many opportunities to, and I've said this to others, that my very first time that I saw flat ground, the very first time I was on a plane, the very first time that I was on an escalator, the very first time I saw a Major League Baseball game, all came from my high school academic team and the opportunities that public education gave me. So I owe it to those people in public education to give my absolute best every single day. And also too, it's a promise to our kids. It's a promise to our kids to say, you're going to get 100% from Robbie Fletcher each and every day. I'm going to fall short sometimes, but I'm going to come in each and every day with that. How do I make our school system? How do I contribute to our state school system in a way that will give students more opportunities and be all in for them? And then finally, too, it's a challenge to educators. I challenge each educator. Whenever you see an email from me at the end, you'll see the closing of all in. And that's really a challenge as you finish off any email or any correspondence from me of, are you giving your best? And I believe the people that I see, I believe they are. But sometimes we need a reminder. So I use that all-in mantra to do that. So I do thank each of you for being a part of this and allow me to build relationships with principals across the Commonwealth in this type of setting. And I do look forward to today's agenda. So thank you so much for just what you do, not only as part of this group, but also what you do for students and staff members each day. I will say that the hardest part, in going, if you want to say up the chain as an administrator, as a teacher, you build those relationships, you're able to see students each and every day. And then the very first lonely seat is the principal seat if you're in administration, because people begin to look at you in a different light. They say, you're no longer one of us. You're no longer a teacher. While they appreciate who you are and what you do, but there's also a lot of tough decisions that you make each and every day that it's best for kids, but sometimes it's very difficult. And how do you communicate that? And if you've got a staff that really believes in kids, they're going to understand it. But sometimes sitting in your seat is very difficult because of you want to make sure you maintain those relationships and in a way that it also gives your kids opportunity. So again, thank you for what you do in this, but also in your role as principal and taking on that leadership role. With that being said, I'll turn it back over to our chair, and I look forward to our meeting. And if there's any type of question that maybe anyone would have for me to start, I'll be happy to answer that. But I don't want to take away too much from the meeting. But again, if there's any comments or questions, I'll be happy to hear those over the next couple of minutes if you'd like, if it pleases the chair.
For sure. Anybody can chime in at any point. We thank you again for your time and taking the stop out of your day to visit with us here. I will go ahead and move on to the next part of the agenda here, our roll call of members. We have several that are kind of rotating off, and before I get started here, I'll just go ahead and give them a shout out, because I know that service of anything for 3 years is impressive, but making time out of your day is a big deal. And so the highlighted names you see there are going to be rotating off after this meeting. So Nick Brooks, Beth Davis, and Sarah Kies, Amy Rhodes, Matt Schaefer, and Peggy Sinclair Morris. Just want to give you a big shout out and say thank you for serving with the Principal Advisory Council. Giving your time and attention. We appreciate it greatly. So I do also want to say we have a new security feature with this meeting, and we are no longer able to respond in the chat for showing agreement or disagreement. So what we're gonna have to do is some verbal. So you'll have to unmute, verbally state, here, but also when we do motions, you'll have to jump on and unmute your mics when we're stating already for our votes here. So when I call your name, just unmute, let us know you're here. Nick Brooks.
Yeah, I am here. However, I will have to leave a little early, about 11 or so today. I've got a doctor's appointment that got rescheduled, but I am here now.
Appreciate it. Now, I know Ashley Bird has taken a new position and will be replaced. She's one of our Kentucky Tech School reps, and so we'll get another representative from one of our Kentucky Tech schools here. Did want to state that again. Appreciate the service of Mrs. Bird here. Ann Cox.
I'm here.
Thank you. Beth Davidson. Okay. Kevin Garner. Jared Hankins.
I am here.
Thank you. Sarah Kies.
I am here.
Thank you. Carla Collodi. Okay. Robert Lightning. Amy Rhodes. Matt Schaefer. Peggy Sinclair Morris.
Here.
Thank you. And Lynn Petrie. This is a new addition to our council here from the Kentucky School for the Deaf. You want to take a second, Lynn, and let us know. Say hi, give us a quick introduction. That'd be great.
Well, this is the beginning of my second year, my first full year as principal here at Kentucky School for the Deaf. It's been a great journey, and it's only getting more exciting as the days keep piling on each other. I'm really trying to create a focus of really investing in the students here as far as literacy, as far as career and technical education. I'm just trying to instill that leadership among every level of student that we have here from elementary all the way up to high school. So I'm excited about this and just being a part of other administrators across the state. And I look forward to learning from you all.
We're all here as a resource, so don't hesitate to reach out. We appreciate you being here. All right, next we have our agenda approval. And the agenda was in the calendar invitation that you all received. So hopefully you guys all have access to that agenda. But I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. And again, just unmute and give us a motion.
Nick Brooks, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thanks, Nick. I need a second.
Peggy, I'll second.
Thank you. I didn't catch the name. I'm sorry.
It's Peggy Sinclair
Thank you.
Morris.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We also have to approve the summary minutes. And again, there is a live link in the slide deck. So if you just click on that, you can bring up the minutes from our previous meeting. You all have had access to those in the past, I believe, though. So I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
This is Ann. I make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Thank you, Ann. Do I have a second?
This is Sarah. I approve.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, next, our first presenter. It looks like we have for supporting aspiring and veteran principals, Danielle Pickens. And I will, is Danielle here?
I am here. Can y'all hear me?
Sure can. Yeah, we'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Hi, everyone. My name's Danielle Pickens. I'm the Chief Program Officer with an organization called the Urban Schools Human Capital Academy. And we train, develop, and network human capital leaders, including principals across the country. And I am here because I am working with the Kentucky Commonwealth Education Continuum on K-12 workforce issues. And we have 8 sessions over the course of the year. And I will tell you that in our first session, when I said, what do y'all want to focus on? What they said to me was, it's really important that we focus on our principals and the support they need. Like Dr. Fletcher said, yours is the first sort of lonely seat in the system where you're feeling like, who do I go to for support? You know, there's no one else in my building who's necessarily a peer. So let me pull up my slides if I'm able to. And let me see if y'all can see this. What, can y'all see that?
Yes.
Thumbs up? All right, great. I can play from the start too. And so, is it still looking good? All right, perfect. So, you know, what we saw when we talked with folks was, you know, supporting principals is key to a lot of things. And you all know this because you are principals. It's the key to improving student learning and attendance. It's the key to improving teacher working conditions. It's the key to improving teacher job satisfaction, reducing teacher turnover. That's not just what we thought, but that's been founded in the research. And so it's been really important for us as a group to say, what would be the highest leverage point as a K-12 workforce group to say, where can we focus? So this group came together very quickly in session 1, said, we really would like to focus on supporting principals. So how can we do that? So we started to dig into the data. We looked at some Kentucky specific data, and what we found were a few things. One was that there are scattered and insufficient supports for principals across Kentucky. So there are some supports available, as you likely all know, but you all are busy and there's likely too little time to track down resources. There are very few resources that are non-instructional, meaning if I need help hiring, do I have templates and tools? Do I have someone I can really go to? Another finding that we found was that the supports that are provided are primarily focused on newer principals. So, those who are in their first, 1 to 3 years potentially. But what if you didn't fit into that category? What supports were available to you? And you might say, I kind of know my job already. I don't need more supports, but I might want maybe a mentor or a coach to be a guide by the side for me, someone who's done this role before. So that was another finding that we found as we looked across the landscape. And then we also noticed an increase in principal turnover in the state. So there was a 17% turnover rate of principals in 2019, and that moved up to 21% in 2022. So we saw that there was this real concerning trend, and we said, what could we do? So we came up with a number of different supports. Some of those are for aspiring principals, some of those are for newer principals, and some of those are for more veteran principals like you all. And what we wanted to ask you to do today was share with you a survey that we have to help us prioritize report recommendations. And actually, I don't want to share all of them right away because I want you all to be the test case for us to see, does this make sense to you standing on its own? So if we were to share this more broadly with principals across the state, do you understand that? And then once you've taken the survey, can you share your perspectives with us? What are some of your favorite support ideas and why? And then how might we also boost response rates to make sure that other Kentucky principals are taking this? Now, I should note that we have 2 surveys. One is an aspiring principal survey, which you all will not be taking because you're not likely aspiring principals. But when we came together with the group, which was made up of ed prep providers, teachers, and principals, some aspiring principals, some district leaders, some co-op leaders, there was a real strong sense that we want to ask aspiring principals what would be most helpful to you, as well as sort of current Kentucky principals. So the survey that I have linked here is actually a survey for you all, the current principals. Now, I am wondering, since I cannot drop this link in the chat, can you all click on that survey? Are you able to click on that? Stacy, I'm wondering, given that I know you have access to these slides, is there any way to share this link, or should we think about sharing this after the meeting? That was a
We can
hiccup I
send,
planned for.
yeah, we can send it through email.
All right, perfect. So what I can do actually, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. What I'll do is I'll actually show you all, since we can't send it, but we will. Do we want to send it now and have them take it now?
Yeah, we can do that if
All
you'd
right.
like.
Sure. So we can have you all do that, but what I might do while we're sending that is I'll actually just pull up a version of the survey so that you all can see what the support ideas were. And once you all get that email, it's in the last slide, Stacy. Once you all get that email, then we can go into the survey. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pivot, which we often have to do when we're doing online learning. And I am going to pull up for you all a copy of the survey so you can see the various places and supports that we thought, and then we can just discuss until we get that survey link going. So give me one moment. I will pull that up for you all. Okay. This is when you're very thankful for the ability to organize your files well. All right, so let me escape that. Come back to you all. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm actually going to pull up a different document. Share window. Okay. Can y'all see my screen? Is that a yeah? All right. No, not yet. Okay.
I can see you. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
And they have the email now with the link.
All right, perfect. Well, while we're getting ready for everyone to have that email, here is what I will show you. Can y'all see my screen now? There should say current principal draft up in the top left corner. It should look like a Word document or a Google Doc to you all.
Yes, we can see it.
All right, perfect. So there are 10 supports or resources that we thought could be impactful to you all. Some resources to nurture your leadership. You'll see an experienced mentor, and there's a little bit more information down below. Dedicated time with a mentor, access to on-demand optional coaching to get targeted support. There are some resources that offer you guidance like turnkey tools for staffing, so ready to use tools for you all, legal guidance on newly passed laws, a curated monthly newsletter that provides selected resources to support you all. These are the things to be aware of this month. And then additional resources that empower you, potentially peer learning networks, optional training, additional funding for high needs schools or students, so potentially extra resources aimed at supporting schools with higher percentages of free and reduced lunch students, and affinity groups for principals of color. So those are the key supports. What we are looking for is your feedback on those through both the survey and here today, to see what would you want us to prioritize? Which of these would you like as veteran principals? Because then that will inform a broader report that we're going to be putting out later this fall, essentially, to tell folks, you know, here is what current principals, and we'll also have an aspiring principals survey as well. Here is what people are really looking for and where we should invest our time, energy, and effort. All right. So given our timing, do y'all have the survey? Would love for you all to just take the survey. It should take about 8 minutes. And then Stacy, what we can do is with the time we have left, you know, we can hear from the group. What do they like? Where would they put our energy and efforts? What should we be prepared to do to get this out to the widest group possible? Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, y'all. So you have the survey, take it. And then when you're done, just kind of let me know with a little hand, thumb up, thumbs up, or just kind of look up and let me know. I was really hoping to use the chat today.
Completed it. I think probably the biggest thing that stands out to me from the survey would be scheduling time that's a regular amount of time with a mentor. Just because our day is bogged down consistently with things that pop up all the time, and to have some dedicated time, I think is important, especially for new principals. So you can, you know, as questions pop up, you can jot things down and say, hey, I'm going to ask my mentor at this specific time. You know, having a mentor is great, but if you don't have time to get together, that makes it tough. So. Danielle, I'm not able to hear you right now.
All right. That is such a helpful piece of feedback. Is there something you think that could be used to make sure that you're scheduling time on a regular basis? Like, how would you encourage this group and say, you know, because we know time is such an issue. How could we, you know, encourage folks who are reading this report to make sure that time is getting scheduled on the regular basis?
I think calendars fill up pretty quick. So, to have something planned, whether it's a regular meeting once a month or even quarterly, something that's going to help you, it's in my calendar, it's there, I've got something scheduled. And so I'm scheduling around it. That may be helpful. You never know how your day is going to go, and it might end up that it has to be rescheduled. But I think having that regular time is important, to have that resource utilized. Yeah.
So having some pre-planning time set up, as well as just flexibility to move that around where needed. Excellent. I see we have 5 responses so far. Anyone else who's finished want to jump in and share, like, what do you feel would be most useful? Anything you would want to add to Brian's thoughts, or is there anything else that you would want to note? I really appreciate this feedback, y'all. It is so helpful to hear from actual live principals. I worked in 2 big districts, and I know how strapped your time can be.
Well, I was thinking just the acknowledgement that experienced principals also need those supports is nice to hear and see that those are that things like that are being considered. I've been here at this school for 11 years now as principal, and I've still got needs, and probably different needs than what I had my first couple of years, but I definitely have things that, networking with other principals, a mentor program, even, like I said, even as a veteran principal, I feel like that would be extremely beneficial. And again, it's nice to hear that those veteran principals are not being forgotten about, and it's still a taxing and can be stressful and need support in those roles.
Yeah, that was something that we noticed too. Folks were saying, there's so many supports available for new principals, but like, what about if you're sort of past those first couple of years? Like, it's not that you have no other needs. So I really appreciate sort of the call out and the acknowledgement of that. When you think, Nick, about how your needs changed from when you were a new principal to now, is there anything that you would want to offer this committee and share back and say, here's what I needed then, and here's what I need now? It feels a little more, so I could even just share back to the group. And I will say, the group has made very clear that like anything for veteran principals would be optional, right? This is not meant to be mandatory. It's meant to be helpful.
I think when I first started, just knowing what I needed to do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis was, something that took a little while to figure out. But I was, younger and more energetic, and so now as I'm a little bit older, I think I know what I need to do and all, but finding scheduling time and really making it a priority to I guess keep myself motivated and inspired to do all those tasks that now I know what to do and how to do it, but making sure that I've still got that same vigor and energy to do those tasks, I guess would be a big thing to consider.
Yeah, there's always that energy level, the growth piece too, for sure. Awesome. Anyone else? I see I have a few more responses in. I really appreciate these. I'm not going to tick and tie them back to anyone. The survey is anonymous, just so you all know, but it is more for us to just get a sense of what are we hearing from principals? And you all are our first test cases. So if there was anything that was unclear, you can also share that out, but we would just love to hear from you all. Any final thoughts before we move on to how do I get other people to take this? So any final thoughts? Sarah, oh, nope, I thought I saw maybe you. Right. All right, so I always like to give a little bit of wait time. It's hard to know sometimes on virtual calls how much space and time to leave and give. And And I'm wondering from you all, are there places and spaces where you think we should be sharing this so we can get a large amount of responses from Kentucky principals? What are your thoughts? How would you encourage people to do this? I'm hoping that the survey didn't feel too long. It seemed like many of you completed it faster than the 8 to 10 minutes that we were thinking about. So any other thoughts or feedback that you would offer to me so I can share this back with the broader committee? Any questions?
This is Peggy Sinclair Morris from the Kentucky School for the Blind. So just a thought, and this came to me after the survey. So I wonder if you could get information from principals that started during COVID, like July. I started in July of 2020, just to kind of see that subgroup, to see, I don't know, the impact of being virtual, if there's things that particular group, if we feel like there's things that we missed, or just kind of gathering some information, because it was such a weird time and a weird time to start as an administrator. So I don't even know, I can't even think of any questions or support, but I'm just interested in seeing what that subgroup feels is lacking, that they're lacking.
That's really helpful. I wonder if I could maybe in the open response section at the end, just say like, if you started during COVID, like maybe give them some examples of things they could share there in the instructions. Thanks,
that
Peggy.
would be great.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. Any final thoughts? You all are sort of the veteran principals who can share. You can say, Danielle, like you missed something. There's something big that you missed. Would just love to hear any final thoughts before we close out and y'all move on to the next portion of your agenda. I hear someone, but I don't think it's to respond.
I just unmuted my mic. That's all it was, I think.
All right, y'all. Well, if something else comes up and you want to, reach out to me, Stacy knows how to get in touch with me. And my email is dpickens, DPICKENS @the.ushca.org. I really appreciate it. If you have friends that who are principals, are current principals, and you're like, what, I would love for you all to take this and tell other folks what we all need, I encourage you to send this along to them. And I really, really appreciate your time today. All right, y'all. I'm going to hop off from the meeting. I hope you have a great rest of your time, and I hope you have a fantastic new school year. We just started where I am, so I know we're all just getting into the groove.
Thank you for being here.
Bye.
All right. That takes us to our Family Partnership Council's recommendation to the Kentucky Department of Ed with Marcia Van Hook.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today at your meeting. And I know that Stacy, someone there's driving my slides. So again, as he said, my name is Marcia Van Hook. I am the full service community schools manager at KDE. I also serve as the Family Partnership Council chair. So just to let you kind of know how those roles come together, but I do want to take some time today and just talk about the Family Partnership Council and those recommendations. Okay, I'm ready. Next slide. So the purpose of the Family Partnership Council, and I hate to read the slide, but I'm going to try to paraphrase for everyone. It serves as an advisory role, much like this group, to KDE, and it's regarding topics of interest to families and just really how to bring families and communities together to help assist in that achievement level. And we talk about better outcomes for all students so that all of that is increased. And that is the purpose of the Family Partnership Council. Next slide. So let me give you a little history about the Family Partnership Council. The members who served on the previous council, the 2021 to 2023, were charged by the former chairperson, who was Brooke Gill. She is from the PrAC committee. Some of you may know her, to compile a report that really talked about and reflected upon the progress that Kentucky made in honoring all of the recommendations set forth from the previous Commissioner's Parent Advisory Council, that was CPAC, in 2007 to present. And so the recommendations that came forth from the Family Partnership Council addressed whether Kentucky had made progress on those previous recommendations and really worked to establish some next steps for the current council membership to see through. And so that's what we're working on. Next slide. So there are 4 recommendations. I'm going to walk through each of the 4 just to kind of give you a view of the landscape where we're headed, and then I will give you a summary of each of those recommendations. So recommendation 1 came out as to encourage schools and districts to develop local web pages that include more robust relationship building and communication metrics around that meaningful family and community engagement. So some of the things that were outlined in that recommendation were to utilize the 4 C's. So you talk about connection, cognition, competence, and capacity for policy and program goals using that dual capacity framework. So you can begin to think about, just in a nutshell, and really to drill this down, how are you using your local school and district web pages to communicate out to families about the pieces that are most often asked about? One thing that came up in a meeting early on was just very simple. Parents were not understanding what the attendance policy was. And so it's really great to be transparent and maybe have that posted on your page. That came as one recommendation through that group. And then also KDE's Full Service Community Schools Manager, which is myself, highlights schools doing family partnerships well. And so we really are looking for a focus on innovative practices that reach historically marginalized families and students. And I'm going to speak to that a little bit further in the slide presentation today. Next slide. Recommendation 2, which has been done, KDE hires the full-time full service community schools manager. I feel like I've said that a lot already. That is myself. I have been in this role for just a little over a year, and that was a new role at KDE. And next slide. And so the third recommendation out of the 4 was that during 2024, the FPC would make recommendations to local educational agencies and other state organizations on tools that support families in navigating educational options and rights within Kentucky's educational system. So I talked about how just one of the very basic things came about. I can't find that information about attendance policy. I'll just use that example again. And so just making some things more available and easy for families to find. And I'm just using that attendance policy piece because we are very, all of us are very focused on chronic absenteeism at the moment. And so just how do we make that and what does that look like? In 2025, FPC will partner, and this is an ongoing piece with KDE, just to create an online age-indexed family-friendly guide that shares the most effective ways for schools to partner with families. Because we all know the research tells us the more that the families in the community are involved in that school and with those students, the more successful our student population will be. Next slide. So recommendation 4 really is kind of a wrap up, is FPC's work in 24 to 26 is just to assist in the implementation of those 3 previous goals. And most importantly, support many more schools' adoption of the Kentucky Family and School Partnership Guide. So that is a live link. You can go out and look at that index. It really is a guidebook to assist schools in increasing family and community involvement. In that, there's actually a self-assessment. So if you want to really see how you're doing as a school, you can take that self-assessment. And you can also read through and find out information about how to become a family-friendly certified school. So next slide. So let me give you that summary that I promised early on. Recommendations 1 and 3 are in the initial stages of conversation and development. And remember, those were the ones about gathering and sharing and having that that very public piece an easier piece for families. Recommendation 2 has been implemented, and that work is ongoing. And so I have a big ask today. In your role as principal advisory council members, we encourage you to promote the use of that success stories of effective partnerships with family forms. And thank you to Commissioner Fletcher. That has been in the Monday message for the last couple of weeks. It also was in yesterday's Wednesday message. So there is a form, and it really is to assist us in gathering statewide the success stories where family partnerships are going well or they're very innovative. So if you think you have something ongoing this fall and you want to wait to fill that out, that's okay. But I also would like for you to think about if you have done something really, really neat, and I'll use Rockcastle County. I know that Commissioner Fletcher went there for some opening things. They did a parent palooza, and they had a tremendous turnout and a tremendous reception, just doing that back to school differently. Those are the kind of stories, and brought in the community and more families. Those are the kind of stories that we're looking for so that we can begin to have a database of those successful practices that really increase the community involvement. So that link to that form has been published. I think it's going to be in the Monday message ongoing for a while. If you've done something over the summer that has really, really impacted your students and your families, please go ahead and submit that to us. We're looking for all kinds of success stories and innovative stories. And I would like to share this. You may think to yourself, you know, we've been doing this. This is old news. It's really all about context. It might be a great practice that another principal, and especially when we were talking about new principals, they may not be aware of that or have not thought about that, or a little tweak. So if you have something that you've done successfully over the summer, please share that, or a back to school activity. We love gathering those ideas. And then in my role, I am going to continue to support that ongoing training for engagement coordinators. So I work very, very closely with PrAC and the Kentucky Community Schools Initiative. Some of you may have heard of that, the KCSI. And so I work very closely with those folks, offer some training, connecting them to the resources at KDE. We have a lot of resources. We have a lot of work that lends itself to community school, to the community school practice, and just really making those partnerships and those strategies very effective, and make that more widespread. So we're just trying to increase that relationship building and the communication, but also linking all of that back to that comprehensive improvement planning. It's not that you have to do something extra, it's that you build that in with the things that you're already doing, because you're getting the support from your community and your parents. So next slide.
If I may, just for a second,
Sure.
please.
Yes.
If it pleases the chair, I make a quick comment. One of the things I think that as school districts across the state that we need to do a better job of is telling our story, especially those positives. We allow so many negative things to enter into and just basically take the oxygen out of the room when it comes to public education. And we allow those 1% or less stories that come out about public education reflect who we are, and that's not it at all. There's the other 99% of the things that we do that we don't advertise, that we really need to tell our story. So anytime that you have an opportunity to have parents or have your teachers or you yourself to share those success stories, we really encourage you to do that. And I believe that's a recruiting tool. It is a recruiting tool, because every single person on this call has an educator that they can point back to say, that person made a difference in my life. That person created a trusting relationship. That person was something that made me want to go into public education. And that's a good incentive for those that are looking for future careers to say, this is why I want to go into public education. So any opportunity, and this opportunity is one of those, to tell success stories about what's going on in your district is very important. So again, please emphasize this as you move forward.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Fletcher. I do appreciate that, because we really are trying to share that message, and he is so spot on. A lot of times, just like, you know, unfortunately the events of yesterday, those are the stories that take precedence, and we don't hear those things that are so very, very successful in our own backyard. So next slide. Oh, sorry. On the Monday message and again in yesterday's Wednesday message, I just took the paragraph that's been there. So that's a link to the form. And we've made this form as simple and succinct as possible so it doesn't take up a lot of your time. We want your stories. So we're, like I said before, working on how we're going to be sharing those. How do we share those success stories and creating a data bank of those best practices? So next slide. I'm going to actually walk you through what the form looks like, and I promise you it's short. So the collection tool for the purposes of this presentation today, in the blue is actually the language that is on the form. It's just a review of what I've shared with you already today. So it just if someone hasn't heard this information, talks through what we're doing. One of the 4 recommendations is to collect these and develop local web pages. And again, these success stories can go right on your local web pages too. So if I'm clicking on your district or your school, I can see those as well. And so the next slide. Thank you. Just page 2. It just simply is when you submit this form, it just talks through some identifying information. I'm going to see your email and your name. So we do have some required questions. What's your district name? What's your school name? And then we get into the meat of the survey. Number 3 is just tell us about that promising or innovative practice that you've implemented at your school or within the district to increase community and family engagement. So you can think about that. I'm going to share that Parent Palooza again. That was a great opportunity to have a lot of families and community engagement at the table for a robust back to school event there in Rockcastle. Next slide. The question is basically the same, but notice the ending is how has that practice positively impacted outcomes for students? So that first question was for families and community. The next question is for students. And then the 5th question is the same question stem with the ending being impacted outcomes for families. So we're thinking about communities, students, and then families. And then number 6, how has the community become more involved because of this practice? You may have developed some new partnerships or some new connections that really have benefited the students there in your building or even the families in your building. Next slide. And then this is the last one, and this is optional, but we love these stories. I had someone reach out and ask me, how do I put more information? I want to tell you more. I said, question 7, that's where you can park all of the information you would like to share. Or if you have comments or say, hey, I'd love to talk to you more, please put that in there and we can kind of navigate that through. So you can see it's 7 simple questions. It's not going to take you very long. And then you just hit submit and we get that information. So next slide. There's my contact information, and I will try to answer if there are any questions before we move on. Or comments. I just do want to encourage you, just as Commissioner said, please share that form and submit some of those practices so that we can begin sharing. And think about how am I telling my own story through my local school website or my district website, or even through the media, however you're going about that. And with that, I think I'm finished. Thank you, Stacy, for having me today. Thank you, members. I do appreciate your time and attention. And any questions, you can email me and I'll be glad to answer. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Van Hook. Real quick before we get to the next item, I saw late addition, and with the changes in our security here, Mr. Lightning, I just wanted to see if you could quickly unmute and tell us that that is in fact you that popped up. I know the day is crazy and sometimes we have to join meetings late, and so I just wanted to get you on record as being here.
Yes, it's me.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, sir.
No problem.
All right. So that takes us to now our school-based decision-making updates with Mia Morales.
Hi, friends. I'm going to share some slides. All right, so good morning, everybody. My name is Mia Morales, and I am the program consultant over SBDM. And I just wanted to take a few minutes of your time today to discuss some new SBDM resources and updates that may be helpful in your role as a principal and an SBDM council chair. To provide some context, for the 23-24 school year, we had over 7,600 council members, and out of those council members, 1,190 of them were administrators. And so I know right now I'm talking to a very small subset of those administrators right now, but I would be remiss if I didn't take the time to thank you for what you do for your councils and your efforts to engage your community stakeholders. The first new resource I wanted to share is our new one-pager series. So these one-pagers are designed to be a quick reference to our most asked about SBDM topics. Well, we have them on bylaws, closed meetings, comprehensive school improvement plan, consultation, open records, and an SBDM member checklist. If you go to our SBDM technical documents webpage, and that's what is a screenshot on the slide. On the right-hand side, underneath our monthly newsletters, you will see our one-pager series. I wanted to give a little sneak peek of if you are interested in these one-pagers, what you're expected to find. So I have an example of the closed meeting and the open records one-pagers. So if you look at the closed meetings, right, it has a little bit of background on the Open Meetings Act and then provides the steps that you would need to take as a council chair to properly close your council meeting. And then in our open records, it has all the requirements that are needed to be compliant with the Open Records Act. So these are just two examples of what you would find if you were interested in looking at that one-pager series. Another resource that I wanted to share is our SBDM handbook. Now, this isn't new per se, but this gets updated fairly regularly. If you haven't looked at the SBDM handbook before, and this is something new, you've never heard of it before, it is a very large document that contains information for all the topics of SBDM, right, as indicated by the table of contents on the screen, right? You'll see there's 14 chapters and then appendices. There are a few specific resources and topics within the handbook that I wanted to point you all to. So we have sample policies and bylaws. So there are some required policies that councils need to have, and we have sample policies of those in sample bylaws. There's a minority election flow chart. So if your school is required to have minority representation on its council, we have like a step-by-step, what do I do next to ensure that I'm being compliant with the statute? We have just general election information. So it's just information generally about the election and also parent and teacher procedures, sample procedures that you can share with those constituent groups. And then what is a handbook without a frequently asked questions document? So there you'll find a whole bunch of questions that we get asked quite a bit. If you are a council chair, you're likely familiar with the training requirements for SBDM and that your experienced members need 3 hours of training and your new council members need SBDM 101 or 6 hours of training. This year, we recently launched a new training for experienced council members called Decisions with Data. So this training walks council members through what data is, what's available for their school, and teaches them how to use that data to make decisions for their schools. When they are being trained in this training, they are using their own school data, right? So they are digging in the school report card, they're digging in the impact survey. So meaning and context is made immediate to those council members who are taking this training. This training is required to be conducted by your district coordinator or some other endorsed trainer, but all the materials are online and free to use. And while I have a bunch of principals here, I just wanted to take a few minutes of your time to get some feedback from you all. So I talked about resources that we have available and some new ones that are available, but I also wanted to hear what you need, right? So I just wanted to open up the discussion and ask, as an SBDM council chair, what other KDE supports or resources would be helpful for you? And if you feel like you're a pro and well-versed in leading SBDM, maybe think back to when it was your first year, right? First year as a council chair, what resource do you wish you had that would make you feel the most confident leading an SBDM council meeting?
Hey, this is Sarah Kaz. I do have a question, and it may be on there, and I have not noticed it, but I would love to have something of like an information sheet for parents to know what their roles are. Like I'm trying to recruit parents to, well, I'm not, but my person is trying to recruit parents to join to be their parent member. And I think a lot of parents are kind of worried and scared about it because they really don't know the responsibilities and roles and what good things they can be a part of. So I would love, there may be something on there. If there is, shoot me and send me that way. But I'd love to put something out there, especially like on social media, so I can get parents, to have nominations for site-based, because I'm struggling right now.
Yeah. So that's a great idea. There is nothing that would currently serve that purpose, but we hear from a lot of districts and schools.
Create my own, but it'd be a lot nicer if it came from you all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
All right. So if you do think of any, feel free to contact me. My contact information is on the screen. It's mia.morales@education.ky.gov, and my phone number is there as well. I appreciate having this opportunity to chat with you all and to get some feedback. And if you ever have any SBDM related questions, please feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to help. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. All right, the next item on our agenda is about chronic absenteeism with Florence Chang and Jennifer Ginn.
Hi, everyone. I am Florence Chang, and I'm here to talk about chronic absenteeism, kind of a hot topic. And Jennifer we're going to open up a discussion at the end about the state campaign and resources. So just a few slides here at the beginning, just to set the stage on data. Chronic absenteeism, of course, is something that is hitting both Kentucky and nationally and even internationally since the pandemic. And just a reminder that this is different than truancy. You all are very aware. This is anybody that misses 10% or more time in school. And this is calculated to the minute in Kentucky. So if they leave in first period versus sixth period versus third period, that is all taken into the calculation. And it includes all absences, excused, unexcused, suspensions, etc., where truancy is only unexcused. So always good to review that definition. Next slide, please. One of the big things that is always good for us to remind ourselves as we're talking about chronic absenteeism since the pandemic is how much of a change that we've seen because of what students experienced during COVID. So on the left side, you see how many of our counties were experiencing kids not coming regularly to school, very much related to free and reduced lunch rates and economic situations within each area of Kentucky. And on the left side, you just see that we did have concerns about chronic absenteeism prior to the pandemic. This is 2017-18 for the counties in blue. And then on the right side, you see how much of a change we've seen with this becoming a statewide issue, almost every county and every district being touched by this. Next slide. So not only do we see this becoming a statewide issue, we also see this exacerbated at different grade levels. And so what you see on this slide is kindergarten through 12th grade. The blue line is where chronic absenteeism rates were for that grade pre-pandemic, and green is post-pandemic. And then the red shows the percent change. So The main takeaways are we still see chronic absenteeism at the highest levels in your high school grades, so 11th, 12th grade. You'll see 40% of our 12th graders were chronically absent in 22-23. But what is really alarming is what we're seeing at the younger ages, which I think surprised a lot of people, but this is what we're seeing nationally, which is that kindergarten, first, second, we're seeing almost a doubling of chronic absenteeism for our youngest kids. And obviously that has really serious implications in terms of first, attendance habits are set early. So the more you miss school at the beginning of your tenure, the more likely you are to have that habit and continue to miss school. So seeing so many kindergartens and first graders and these young ones missing school is a concern for all the rest of their tenure. And then, of course, they're missing so much of the foundational skills, not just the numeracy and literacy skills, but social skills, the ability to take turns, the ability to work in groups and things that get set and you learn as you join school. So this is also a concern. Next slide, please.
If I, Dr. Strang, if I may add,
Yes.
please.
Of course.
Thank you so much. I'm going to navigate back to the map. And I think this map is so alarming. If you look at the pre-pandemic counties with 20% chronically absent versus post-pandemic, and then if you look at that sliding scale, we have districts that are up to 62% of their students that are chronically absent, and we all know that the damage that causes to a child, not only from an educational side but also socially. But again, this is one of the reasons why at the department that we've been working on our campaign is to get that awareness out there to let people see this. As a matter of fact, I don't think I've shared this with our communication team, but this is a slide that actually I shared this with the director again. Actually a couple of our legislators asked for this slide specifically because they had seen it somewhere and wanted those numbers and wanted to see that. So again, this is something that's definitely on the radar from our legislators and what can be done. So ideas for chronic absenteeism and how to attack that, please share that widely. But also too, I want to thank our KDE team for the work that they've done. We've kind of stepped out of our comfort zone a little bit, if you will, because this is more of an advertising campaign for us and marketing. So this is one of the things that if you look at those billboards across the state, I'm very proud of Team KDE for the work that they've done on this chronic absenteeism. But again, as you can see on this slide, with the map, this is almost one of those things where you have to sit down and really adjust and think about, wow, this is definitely an issue for our kids. And again, as everybody on this call knows, this is not truancy. Truancy is an issue of its own, but chronic absenteeism, just students just missing time for any reason, whether they have an excused absence or not. But it is definitely an issue, especially post-pandemic. Thank you for allowing me to insert that. Thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely. And shout out to Leslie McKinney from our commissioner's office who put together these data slides. She's been amazing with the visualization. This is a slide showing the different groups. So we see that it's a statewide issue. We see that there's concerns at the bookends of our grade levels. Now we also see that there is this went up in every group, student group, pre and post pandemic. You'll see our homeless students, 50% now were chronically absent after the pandemic, which is a very serious number of students missing school. And then all the way to gifted and talented also doubled. So in every single group of kids, we have seen this increase. Next slide, please. We've talked about this particular slide at one of our last principal advisory councils last year, but just a reminder, these are what Attendance Works, which is the national organization that works on this. They bucket this out, why students miss school, into 4 major areas: barriers, aversion, disengagement, and misconception. I won't read you the slide. You have this as a resource, but I will point out that these are the same reasons that students were missing school before the pandemic, with a few exceptions now that we're seeing as heightened reasons. So number one, what has really changed? Well, that social isolation during the pandemic, the CDC now says that has had an absolute effect on kids. So anxiety, mental health issues have drastically increased since the pandemic. So that's one major change that's going to take resources and supports to address. The second one is probably perception of illness and just when to keep kids home. Maybe a little bit more conservative now in terms of making sure your kids are staying home if they have the sniffles. And now we can do some more communications. There's more clarity about when you can send kids to school. And so communicating, again, the physical aspects of when you can send kids to school with parents is important. And then lastly, the biggest change that happened is likely the habits that were formed during COVID. So we have parents that are staying home, caregivers that are staying home more because of hybrid work or work from home options. And then we have students that were very much used to getting their online work and getting and education being delivered in a different way. And so maybe going to school, that's what our Student Advisory Council has actually shared with us. Sometimes going to school may not be in person, may not be as high on their priorities. So several reasons, but definitely we saw some drastic changes because of the experience that kids and families went through. Next slide. So we want to talk to you today about mainly Tier 1 supports for attendance since we're at the beginning of the school year. I will plug that our team, and we've got our contact information at the end. We do trainings on Tier 1, 2, and 3. Today we're talking mainly about Tier 1 since we're at the beginning of the school year. This, like I've said, this is a national issue. I was just on a call where Ohio's Department of Education shared that if you just look at attendance in September, they found that students who miss even just 2 to 3 days in September are 5 times more likely to be chronically absent over the course of the school year. So even attending to this first month of school is going to be important in terms of prevention. Next slide, please. So 4 main areas that we'll talk about with Tier 1. Connection, belonging, and safety, of course, is the foundation, and helping kids want to be in school. Commissioner Fletcher talked about his experience on the academic team and creating those experiences that strengthen connection, strengthen belonging, strengthen the relationship they have with the school. So not anything new, but just to continue to emphasize that this is the foundation. And we do include in here the educator belonging, sense of belonging. So the impact survey for right after the pandemic actually showed that as a state, our educators had a lower sense of belonging than our students. So educator connection is just as important as student connection, as our students do feel when their teachers are not in school, and they notice that. So collectively, connection, belonging, and safety at Tier 1. Next slide. And of course, the instructional climate is important. That's why we emphasize so much the United We Learn experiences, vibrant experiences, and just giving students that meaningful real-world connection. And so you can see chronic absenteeism, there's no silver bullet. This is really about the entire climate of the school, both emotional, social climate, and instructional climate. So this is just a reminder that giving students that those hands-on relevant learning is critical. And we do hear from students that if they are in school and spending a lot of time on their devices, then they don't feel as connected to why do I have to be in school? So students do voice that. So having that hands-on interactive learning is important. Next slide. And then another part of Tier 1 is proactively addressing external barriers. We could probably have a whole day on just this slide. There's so much in terms of how we can work with our community to address external barriers. It is important, as you'll hear from Jennifer, Director again, that this is something that we need our community to be involved with. When you go talk about whether it's health, public health department, and telehealth is something that we've heard a lot of schools and districts are leveraging to help their kids stay in school. Transportation, that hits different districts. So if you are a district that's struggling with transportation, there are ideas that can be leveraged. It is still a challenge because of the shortages that we see with the adults and bus drivers. But there are some partnering options. And then there's also some creative ways you can use, like McKinney-Vento money or Title I money to help with your student group, such as your homeless group, or students who need a transportation option that is more personalized to their situation. There's data showing that providing breakfast for longer or in the classroom helps kids just come to school in the morning. If they know they're getting fed, there's a group of kids that, we know that's why they come to school. A big part of why they come to school is to eat. And so providing that can be helpful for attendance. And then just, of course, always addressing any barriers. And so laundry at school, just an example of how our family resource and youth service coordinators have worked with our community to build those facilities within the schools. And that can also help with getting kids to school, or helping address why, they're not coming to school, maybe is the better way to put it. So those are three major ways that Tier 1, just reminders, but we really want to focus on this last area as we talk to you also. Next slide, which is the importance of communication. So I love that Marcia was on this call, because family partnership is one of the key aspects to this. Every family with a chronically absent student has a story. That is something that is very clear as we talk to families. It's very personal, and it's very sensitive in terms of when you work with families with students that have had physical health issues or anxiety. So the Tier 1 piece is really just about communicating and helping parents understand that it's important that students come to school, but also that schools are providing some support to help their students feel comfortable and welcome when they're in school. So the predominant amount of research is showing that when you talk about letters, text, emails, all of that, it's important to come from a lens of empathy and positive language, kind of remove the punitive language at first. Punitive and legal consequences can come more at the Tier 3 level, but at the beginning, it is more about awareness and support, of course. And texts are extremely effective. If you look at this list from a research perspective, texts are much more likely to be opened and read than letters or emails. So that's just a couple of tips. And then the most important aspect that we probably don't talk about enough is that the data continuously shows that teachers in the classroom are where the connection happens. And so having educators talk to students about the importance of attendance, or just saying, I missed you, or creating that culture where their peers say, I missed you, can be just as effective, and it's free, right? Just to say, we're going to create this culture where we notice when kids are gone, and we're going to say something. So those are super easy tips that just are good to remind folks of. So next slide, we're going to talk a little bit now about the communication campaign that the state is implementing. So I will turn it over to Director Ginn.
Florence, pardon me, Kentucky's trying to kill me with allergies recently.
Yeah.
So this happened last month. I can't believe we're in September. We kicked off this campaign, and hopefully you saw some of this or heard it. We were trying to basically hit all areas of Kentucky. We did a billboard campaign, which you see pictures of ones that were actually, out in the wild. And again, it goes back to the idea that Florence said of a positive welcoming campaign. It's the idea that we missed you being there. And we try to hit all areas, elementary to high school, of the things that we hear kids are there for. It's you're missing hanging out in the playground with your friends. You're missing band. You know, like we had band kids. Anderson County was great in letting us borrow their buildings and their kids for a couple of days this summer. And it was, we had kids, and then in the center was an empty chair with, I believe it was like a saxophone on it. So, you know, you miss band. Then we had a student welding with a mask in front. We had a football game. You know, students walking behind, and you've got the empty helmet. It was the idea of these are the things, and lunch as well. These are the things that students come to school for. And you know, we missed you. So we had the billboards up across the state. We had 16 in Louisville, 9 in Lexington, 2 in Bowling Green, 2 in Paducah, a large digital one in Covington, 2 in Pikeville, and 2 in London. There may be still, I think we've got 1 or 2 that are still out till about mid-month. And you're going to see these again come January, same numbers, same areas. Hopefully you saw some of those. We were also doing radio ads with iHeartMedia, so it was on stations across the state and their streaming platforms. You're going to hear the streaming longer. That's going to be back also in January. Then it's going to be March and April on the streaming platforms. We also had Spectrum ads because it's the best way really to get broader coverage across the state. And again, you're going to see those again in January. And all of these things had student voices. It was the students telling you, you know, we missed you at the game. We missed you in class. Just because people are going to pay more attention to hearing that from the student voice. So when you see those again, please feel free to share them with families, point them out in social, tag us. We'd love to amplify that voice. We have also been working on the chronic absentee webpage, which you'll see a link to here, and we've made it super easy to get to. Pardon me. If you go to the KDE homepage, you scroll down just a little bit at the top, there's one of those big blue buttons that has, I believe it's chronic absentee resources. That takes you to our main chronic absentee webpage, which you'll see one of the billboards at the top. Gives you a little bit of a reason why we're doing this. And then if you scroll down, there is a chronic absentee toolkit button, which will take you to some resources that hopefully you'll find useful. And if you need anything else, if you have good ideas for resources, let us know, please. We have created a fact sheet that comes in several different forms. We've got an electronic version. We've got an electronic version you can put a school or district logo on. So, you know, it also shows your branding. We've got the same thing on ones that you can print. So we've got the one with just KDE and then the one that you all can put your logo on. We have some sample letters that kicked off the campaign. We also have a script for social media on there with some ways that you can personalize it, that you all could use and post on your social media accounts. Can be you all, the principals, can be the superintendents, can be both. The commissioner did a video, and it is up on our chronic absentee resources webpage. That, you know, if you want to share that, we've got it on our social media channels. Just trying to basically raise awareness that this is an issue. And it's not just us, it's across the country. But it's trying to, in a positive way, say, listen, we know this is happening, and it's going to take everybody. It's going to take us. It's going to take community members. It's going to take students, parents. It's not just a school issue. It's everybody. Pardon me. We also, Florence and I both also wanted to touch base. when you do start messaging on this type of campaign, we've seen in the past week and a half or so, sometimes it can be a little tough, right? People can be sensitive to the fact. I had a call from a parent on Friday who wanted to talk about a letter they got from their school about their child. That's why we do the idea of make sure it comes from an angle of support. Maybe it is, instead of we say, these are the reasons why your student may be absent, maybe we just hit each one of those and go, hey, is your child suffering from anxiety? Here's some resources we have that could be helpful to you. Does your student have issues getting to school? Have they been sick? Just constantly pointing back to there are people in the district, in the school, who can help them. And then showing those resources. If you have resources on your website, linking to those. Feel free to link to our stuff. We're always willing to help. And we are in the process. Florence and I did this presentation in front of our Commissioner Student Advisory Council last week. And they suggested posters. So those are underway. We are modifying the billboards to be, I believe we decided 11 by 17. And those are going to be available on the toolkit that you can print off. Maybe we might be able to provide some of those at events. We're working on the funding side of that. The students were saying, we notice if posters change because, it's always the same ones we see on the billboards. If you can put it on a front door when they come in. One person suggested, it was somebody who did a PIO from a school district, said put it at the where the parents have to sign in their students who are late. Just an awareness that, we missed you. These are the things you miss when you aren't in class. You got any other comments on that, Florence?
Yeah, I would just say you're exactly right, like to create messaging from a lens of support and empathy. I think it's also helpful if you have a family advisory council in your own district or a family partnership council similar to what Marcia has at the state level. It's always helpful to get their input on the campaign, get their eyes on the messaging before you put it on any of the social media platforms. I think parents sometimes can bring up issues that you may not have thought of. And so I think it's great to partner, if you can, with the parents in your district, the caregivers in your district, to run this campaign together. So that would be my main advice. And also, I don't think it hurts to let parents know that in messaging that your own data, your own district's data, this is why it's a concern. So for example, in the state, we talk about 1 in 3 students right now aren't coming to school regularly. And when you hear 1 in 3, that kind of gets people's interest piqued. So using data is also something that can be helpful to communicate the importance of this topic and why we're bringing it up now. So, and we have a lot of data tools. So if you go to our webpage, you can see that and also reach out for any trainings if you're interested.
And again, when you're checking out the toolkit, if you see things that would be useful to you or your district, please let us know. This is something that we're adding to over the years. So we've got this as being a school year long campaign. So it won't be the last time you hear about chronic absenteeism. I know the commissioner has been hitting that message when he's been interviewed or speaking in public. It's just something that we need to continually bring up. And here's the sources. Here's how we can help. Please reach out. All right. Are we good?
I think next slide, if there is any, I think we're going to run this similar campaign in January. Am I right? So with the radio ads, if anybody has any suggestions for mid-year corrections or mid-year messaging for our state team to consider, we would absolutely be open to suggestions. Has anybody found something effective in your district or in your school that has been helpful?
So
And if you can't, oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, if you can't think of it right now, please, we've got our emails that are on the final slide. So we'd love to hear from you. But I'm sorry, please, let's hear what you've got that's been working.
Well, I don't know about working. Chronic absenteeism, I'm preschool through third grade. And so I see everything. And I also, we have, as a district, we have an attendance group that breaks down the kids, and we look at the individual kids and why are they missing. Just an observation from me, and I can't speak for everybody, but just at my school, what I do notice is that kindergarten and first graders are the ones to get sick because they haven't been exposed to as many things. They're also, if they're getting outside therapy that's recurring, they get the worst time slots because they're the newest patients at whatever these outside services are, OT, PT, speech, ABA. And so you have to be a patient for so many, years or whatever before they start offering you better time slots that are after school. So that's something that's frustrating because you want the kid to get help, but they're trying to do best by them, but it's missing school. Another observation, and I don't know what we do about it, is that I actually think your numbers are probably low, because what I see is that a lot of ours that are chronically absent, and I recognize there's a difference in truant and chronically absent, but those that are chronically absent and truant tend to withdraw to homeschool. And homeschool can be fine if the parents take it seriously and really use a quality curriculum. But sometimes homeschool becomes the out for these students. So I don't even think some of these that are probably the worst case are even included in your data because they're no longer in school, which then, of course, for a primary school like myself, they end up coming back a year later, 6 months later, but they are significantly behind. And then that's just a catch-up game that's very frustrating.
Thank you. Those are great observations. And yes, it is a concern. I do think our numbers, there's certain days too that aren't included in the calculation, like EHO days, which families can get up to 10 days for that. And again, like you said, it can be quality experiences happening outside of school, but in some cases, 10 additional days outside of the school building for kids who are chronically absent. Those are also concerning just because it's so few days with your peers and with your adults to build those relationships. So I echo you. And then of course the homeschool, we continue to monitor those attendance numbers. So that's really good feedback. Is there anybody else who wants to talk about anything that you're doing or any other observations we should be aware of?
Hey, this is Brian Ehrenberg. Hey, I'll say I love the student focus of the program that you guys are putting out there. I think that is important. I was a high school principal starting out, and the students really had a say in whether they were in attendance or not. Now as an elementary principal, I can tell you that having a component focused on the parents, I think, is going to be vital as well, just because the kids, I know they want to be at school. We do a program here at my school it's the house system. And so, we give kids a sense of belonging right away, something to be a part of, and they're with the whole school, but then breaking down into smaller groups to get to know all the kids from the school K through 5. And so we purposefully and intentionally mix up the kids, give them opportunities to build relationships in the student body, so that it becomes a welcoming place, and they really hate to miss. But then, parents come in and they have activities or things going on that I think the kids don't have a lot of control over sometimes. And that definitely affects, whether they're in school or not, at least at this level. So.
I love that. And I think you just highlighted what's interesting about attendance is you can address attendance without ever saying the word attendance. You can actually create those experiences to let kids want to be in school. Like you said, parents feeling welcome, families feeling engaged in their school activities, sporting events, all of that, where school becomes like, this is our community. This is where we spend our time. And so that's the house system continues to be a very strong way to build that sense of belonging. So again, a great reminder on that. So yeah, you don't even have to use the word attendance. So that's a great point. Anyone else? All right, Stacy, last slide, that's our contact information. So just want to make sure you had that in case you wanted to reach out for any trainings or resources. Thank you so much.
And Stacy, I just wanted to mention before I leave, the commissioner wanted me to pass his apologies along. He had to leave. He got called away to another meeting he had to get to. So he wanted me to pass that along to you all.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your time and all the information. I think now that we'll move on to our Kentucky Educator Mentor Program, Todd Davis.
Good morning, everyone. It's been a while since I've actually got to communicate with this group. And so first I want to say thank you for what you do. I know Dr. Fletcher mentioned the loneliness of the role of a principal, but I also know that time is a hot commodity for each of you, and then what an important role it plays in your daily event. So greatly appreciate your time and value your input and your role as a PrAC member. So again, thank you. I'm Todd Davis. I'm the Director of Division of Educator Preparation and Certification, and some of you may relate that to EPSB, and we call it OELE, as well as the Office of Educator Licensure and Effectiveness. So Ms. Noah had asked me to share some information on our mentorship program, and I'm just giving you just a brief history of how this came about. I'll share my screen. So Senate Bill 265 was passed this past session, and it required a new mentorship program, and essentially it removed all the language that was associated with KTIP and repealed those pieces. However, there was some additional language in the bill that addressed certification with the ed prep programs and alternative pathways. They still have to complete those pathways and pass the required assessments. But some of our alternative routes, which required employment offers from districts, are now no longer in place. So individuals can apply for some of those alternative routes and get a certificate, a temporary provisional certificate, without having the job offer. The main impact of 265 was to charge EPSB with developing standards and guidance for local districts to implement a teacher induction and mentor program. Based on the language, as you see here in section 2, it does require all districts provide an induction program for teachers in their first year of teaching. The standards that fall under the language of the statute as well, the orientation program, mentor assignment, A support team. The support team is one that you may associate with that old KTIP team. Was I think the approach for that and the thought when the bill was constructed, that we provide support for the teacher, the new teacher, through a teacher, but then also a principal, and then others associated with the district and the school, and potentially outside the school with our ed prep folks. Workshops and trainings, there was professional development that's required. Additionally, this all fell back to what was used to implemented through the KTIP training, now falls back on districts and how you're going to work with your mentors, but as well as your mentees, and what those expectations are for your plan, but then also how you're going to support each other through the first year. The opportunities for the new teacher and mentor to meet, again, this is another one that was closely related to KTIP. There were some required hours that were mandated in KTIP. However, there's a great deal of flexibility that districts have to require, have to allow time for them to meet and designate time. However, that is very flexible in how that's carried out. And so you can work in what best fits you for individual schools as districts as well. And then there also spoke to a network of teachers, and this one gets beyond, it's very similar to what looks like the support team, but then pulling in from other folks out within the district or community or the ed prep world, or even some of our K groups, some of our support groups that we partner with, how we can tie into those, as well as our cooperatives. And we know as districts, we rely heavily on them. And so it is very common right now for our cooperatives across the state to be moving towards finding ways to support you in these mentorship programs. And then formative and summative evaluations, that was again part of KTIP, but we'll speak to some specifics on that here in just a few minutes and kind of clarify what that really means for you as you start to implement your district's plan. Additionally, it did require EPSB to develop evaluations and rubrics. And you can see the three main points that it wanted EPSB to address around curriculum, content mastery, planning, and assessment, as well as teaching all students and family engagement. The benefit to this is that I'm sure you're very well aware of a tool that we've had access to since, I guess, 2009 initially with the framework for teaching. And so we, as a group, relied heavily on that and identified those ways that we can promote the framework for teaching and allow districts to use that around the evaluations. Again, teacher evaluation is actually housed in another statute, 156557, that ties back to the Kentucky Framework for Personnel Evaluation, and that those pieces are and requirements are actually outlined in your certified evaluation plans. And so it will align very well with that framework for teaching, which is required for teachers as well. So as part of the rubrics, this just speaks to the things that needed to be included, the categories of evidence, multiple measures, all those same pieces, and again aligns tremendously well with our framework that was passed in previous legislation for evaluating teachers. And then the last piece, we'll talk about this at the end specifically, but EPSB is also required to begin this October by presenting our legislators with a report, an annual report that shares some of the highlights of your program. And as you see here, there are quite a few things. They want to know the number of mentors and mentees, the analysis of preparedness. So there are some things that as we move forward for this year, we will be very limited on what we can report on. So we are waiting for approval on a survey to be sent out to districts, hopefully by the end of this week, that we can get that out and allow some time to identify just the numbers of mentors and the mentees, the preparedness that it's going to take some time for implementing programs before we can really get information centered around that. The types of training that districts use, and then also the remediation support. So what type of supports do you use when needed to support teachers? And again, a lot of this is going to be followed while we may have plans as district. It's going to fall back to the fact that we've implemented for at least a year or more to gather quality information and adjust. The major components of the induction program. So the survey will include a drop down, but then also allow for others. And essentially, we're looking to see if your program has all the major components. And again, it's district based, not this is not state mandated. And we'll speak more clearly on that here in just a minute as well. How programs operate. So how are you funding your program is one of the things the legislature wants to know. And with that question, I've received a few questions here recently. Unfortunately, there was no money allocated in the state budget for this program. So the funding falls back to the districts. And so how are you utilizing other opportunities now to support your program? How long they receive their support? You know, it also, it mentions in the statute a little bit conflicting language around multi-year support, but then the mandate of the first year for the mentoring. But then many districts we know have been implementing since 2018 with the dissolve of, or the non-funding of KTIP, that you were implementing some type of a plan already. And so you can still hopefully utilize those funds and then also give us a cost estimate of what it costs per teacher to support that teacher for a year. And then measures how you're determining effectiveness of your program and impact on teacher retention. So again, we know that new teachers need support, and if we can support them at a minimum through 1 year, but then looking at 3 and 5 years and that slow release type approach, that we tend to retain those teachers. And then the last one is the long-term analysis of the mentor programs and retention. So those are the things that districts are required to do in their mentoring program. And so with a very short turnaround, we had a large stakeholder group that consisted of principals, teachers, KDE, as well as EPSB board members, ed prep providers, some of our colleges and institutions identified professors to participate, our K groups. So it was a very large group, and in a very short period of time, again, we had to provide guidance for this information and around these standards. And so we came to an agreement within weeks to and develop the Kentucky Educator Mentorship Program guidance document, which has been shared through the commissioner's Monday message, and then also communicated or provided through email to HR directors, superintendents, assistant superintendents, and so on. So trying to catch all bases as we can. But this document is, again, it's guidance. So the way we approached it is, as you look through it, and Stacy has provided you access to the document as well, but each component has an approach where we list the requirement based on the language. We include the language from the statute on what you must include. And then from there, you can look at not only what's required, but then guidance around potential things that you may consider as you're implementing your program. So for this case, the mentor assignment, KTIP had very specific requirements in the past. Well, there is a requirement that they have at least 3 full years on a professional certificate. There are other requirements that districts now have flexibility to set in your plan and carry out. And so throughout the document, again, around support team and so on, it just provides those minimum requirements that your plan has to have, but then other ways that you can potentially carry those out. Are you all seeing the document? Or are you seeing the slide still?
No, we're not seeing the document.
Okay. Sorry about that. When I switched, that's what confused me. I saw it on the other computer. So here again is the document. This is formative and summative evaluations, and we mentioned this one earlier. As far as the framework for personnel evaluation and the framework for teaching, we relied heavily on that, trying to create ways that districts could utilize what you're already doing. And essentially that's what the entire document, it was how it was approached, is what districts were currently doing, because we know that many districts had plans that took over from KTIP when that was no longer funded. Then how you can build on that, or in some cases, not even have to adjust in any form or fashion. So how can you build on what you're already doing? And then there's a definition section and then some resources in there. So one important piece to this is when I presented this to the board back in July for their approval, to release the districts, is that we want this to be a living document. And so we need feedback. So this is another role from your, or another more input that we need from you as a principal, that we want to know what's going on in your district, the good things that are going on, so that we can share those best practices and add to this document so that we can support districts in a better fashion moving forward. There's some roles and responsibilities that we just kind of go through what each person is responsible for. But then as it gets into the teacher evaluation, again, we focus on the framework for teaching and what you're currently doing in your certified evaluation plan. As part of this one, or this section, we work closely with Ms. Stacy Noah. She contributed a lot of this information, which I think you all may be familiar with. I think you've seen this either through the PrAC or through your P3 group that supports principals as well. But then giving you some more resources and guidance on how the framework falls into the alignment that is needed for this plan. And then the last section again is the reporting. We have to report again October 1st. So we will be sending that survey out soon, but it is again going to be very limited. We try to create drop downs and limit it to as short a effort or as light as effort as we possibly could. There's opportunities to add other things, but then as we move forward, we'll be able to report more detail on what is occurring in districts and that analysis and preparedness that the legislators are looking for. if you have questions or have feedback that we can strengthen the guidance document, you can email myself, and my email is at the end of the document as well, and Sharon Salzman. We're working together to support this work currently until we get somebody in place. So those are the minimum requirements for districts right now around the mentoring program. Again, there's a great deal of flexibility in how things are carried out. But I know there's a lot of questions that have arisen because of the short turnaround, and then also how it may align with your current program. We received a lot of questions asking those types of things as well. So I'll just open it up and ask if you have any questions today, and if not, feel free to email me at any point in time, and we'll do everything we can to give you the answers. May not be what I may have to rely on other folks. I know OTL, our Office in Teaching and Learning, is also providing some guidance around Title II that should be coming out if it hasn't already. Any questions on the mentoring? I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you for the information presentation. And like you mentioned before, the Kentucky Educator Mentorship Program guidance is in an email Ms. Noah sent to us. You guys can pull it up there and view it at your leisure there. This takes us now to Principal Advisory Council membership. And with the parting of several of our members, they have opened up the application for new principal for new committee members. I know yesterday I was told the P3 newsletter had the application live, and you can also access it here through the slides. It closes in November, and new members going to start in December at the next meeting. But I was told to ask you guys to share it with other principals, people you think may be interested that would like to serve on the committee here. Mrs. Noah, do you have anything to add to this?
No, nothing at all. But just want to encourage folks to share, try to recruit. We have certain regions that we need to find representatives for. So just be aware of that. And then there will be another PR push about this probably coming out in the commissioner's weekly message, and then just other outlets as well.
Okay, thank you. And this takes us to the last option here, our adjournment. And before I take a motion for that, I'll tell you the upcoming meeting dates: December 3rd, March 4th, and June 3rd. There is also a form to provide feedback about today's meeting, and that, I believe, is also where you can add information for topics you'd like to see at the next meeting. And so please jump on, or at least click on that and leave it up. And when you get a chance today, fill that out if you have any suggestions for topics for future meetings. This time I will open it up for a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn. This is Ann.
Thanks, Ann. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
I believe that was Mr. Lightman, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 I will say the ayes have it. This concludes our meeting, and I thank you guys for being here and giving your time. Good luck with the start or continuation of your school years. Appreciate it.